Hello, everybody, and welcome to another fantastic episode of Truth Wanted. I'm your host, Objectively Dan, and this is the live call-in show that happens every single week, Fridays at 7 p.m. Central Time. We talk about what people believe and why. This is episode 4 of 5 of Theist Month that we're doing this week. This is a month where we are having exclusively theist guests, never done before in the history of the show or the ACA, might I add. Pretty cool stuff that we're doing here. I am joined tonight by my guest Matthew Distefano. Matthew, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. Cleanup. I didn't know I was 4 or 5. That's fantastic. And five Fridays this month, I guess, right?
Yeah, you're here, and we got you in, and we're just ready to have a good time here, folks. I have to address the elephant in the room, and that is, why do I have breadsticks behind me as my green screen? Now, when we get started in the show, of course, before the show starts, we kind of get stuff ready. We're doing tech checks and stuff. And as soon as my camera turned on, I was just mouthing a big old breadstick and kind of looked like I was enjoying it, I guess. So the crew thought that it would be appropriate to have some breadsticks in the background. So that's why that's there. So I can't wait to see the comments later when people are just looking up clips and they're just wondering, why is there breadsticks? Well, now you know. So this is a Truth Wanted deep cut for the lore. So thank you, crew, for doing that. And Matthew, welcome to Truth Wanted. This is where we talk about breadsticks, apparently, and also fun stuff. Matthew, you are an author, you are a podcaster, you do a bunch of stuff. Tell us about yourself, Matthew.
Well, yeah, before I do that, I thought maybe you brought the breadsticks on because of my last name, my Sicilian heritage. But,
oh no, this was not a statement, a political statement of any time. This was just me and a man enjoying some breadsticks. That's all that's happening.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, I do a lot of things. I try to stay busy with. I do social work. I write books. I have a couple podcasts. The Heretic Happy Hour. I know you had Keith Giles on here. So shout out to him. I do that show with him. And I write for Pathios, Progressive Christian, as in same place as Keith does. Although, I mean, I hope my editor-in-chief is not listening. I don't identify as a Christian any longer, but I like studying Christian theology and the history of Christian thought. And so maybe now they'll fire me, but but no, I enjoy writing there. And I work as a social worker. I run a food program for low-income folks. I even got a hip hop mixtape. So I'm like, I'm staying busy all the time, man.
So I try to do research on every single person that comes in, obviously, and we try to talk and stuff. Now, I never asked you before we talked about, because on your Twitter, it does say hip hop artist. And that's one of those things where, well, we have to talk about that, because you don't put hip hop artists on your Twitter unless you mean it. So give me the deets. What's up with that?
I've always been into hip hop. A couple years ago, I was like, maybe I could try it out and see if I'm all right. And lo and behold, I have a music minor. I went to school. I studied music and stuff, some audio engineering and all that. But yeah, it was just one of those things where I've always been into it. I tried my hand in it. I put out a 7-song mixtape. It's a passion project, i.e. that which doesn't make you money, but that's all good. Like, I'm not trying to be the greatest or anything like that. I just was like, I just want to do this just to kind of broaden the way I think about life and art, and just try to be as eclectic as possible, man.
That is, that's goals right there. Hip hop artist, author, podcaster. I mean, I hope I can achieve all of those accolades sometime. Not sure about the hip hop artist part. That might be off the table for me, but hey,
maybe go do a stand-up set or something. I don't know.
A stand-up set, something else kind of random in there. Maybe I'll get into gardening or something. I can write about gardening for Pathios or something.
There you go.
Yeah, Pathios is an interesting website, in case you guys have never seen it, because it's the only website on the internet where you can see people on both sides of the aisle, I guess, really rant about sometimes being on the same page, sometimes having the direct opposite opinion on things, and both post the same website. So it's kind of interesting.
It's really interesting, and it's funny because I've met Hemant Mehta on there, the friendly atheist, and talked to him on our podcast, and actually gotten to know him a little bit. And it's funny because Like I resonated with that dude way more than anyone on like the evangelical page. I mean, 100%. You know?
Yeah, but yeah, Hemet's been on this show. It was a great episode. If you guys
Yeah.
haven't seen it, you should check it out. But he is a cool dude.
He totally is.
But
Yeah.
yeah, so like I wanted to start talking about your book first. I think that was kind of interesting to me when I was first hearing about you from Keith. And tell us a bit like about what that book is, because I think you would do a better job of describing it than I would.
Well, I mean, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I have to ask you which book, because I've got 6.
Right. So your most the Bonfire book.
Oh yes,
that you got. Yeah.
Yes.
That's your most recent one, correct?
Yeah, it came out on 420. What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what's up.
Yeah. So yeah, it's called the Bonfire Sessions. It's it's a book I wrote with my best friend Mike Machuga, who is a Buddhist, and I'm probably more inclined and gravitate more toward Buddhism just as a practical means to living my life as a human being. And we literally just we didn't have an outline. We literally just talked back and forth and wrote it down, and then edited it so it's actually readable and put it out to the world. Because not because we're trying to like prove anything, or we don't have a thesis, nothing like that. It's literally like, human beings don't know how to talk, especially in America these days.
True.
So here's what it's like to talk to someone who we don't even know what we're going to talk about. We don't know if we're going to agree or disagree. Or we're not friends because we necessarily agree on everything. We're just trying to model how to have a conversation in a respectful way, like we're doing here.
Yeah, sounds like exactly the show. So that's great. That's cool. Yeah. So like you did identify as a Christian, at least at some point in your life. At least most of your life, I'm assuming.
Yeah. I'm 38 now. I'm 38, and so for 25 years or so, definitely American evangelical Christian. Though had my doubts and my skeptical moments throughout, and which is probably why I'm not a Christian any longer, because when you ask questions in the church and you're giving really bad answers for thinking people, you end up going, nope, can't do this anymore.
Right. I think a lot of people who are fans of this show can probably relate to that. But if you don't mind, like, what's that deconstruction process been like since then? Because it sounds like you've been a journey to different places.
Yeah, totally have. And sometimes it's like a journey to nowhere. It's literally just being comfortable in your uncertainty. So I think it's been every emotion, the highs, the lows. You have this worldview, right? And you have all your friends are in that Christian worldview for the most part. I played worship, so I had a lot of friends in different teams, a lot of people in youth group and church groups and Bible studies and all this. And when you lose all that, and that's what it is, it's a loss. You go through, my friend Michelle Collins, who's getting her psychology doctorate, has written a book on the fact that this deconstruction story, for most people, no matter what the specifics are, it looks like the grief cycle. You lose family, you lose friends because you realize that your friendship is really based on like beliefs. And when those beliefs change, you're like, she uses the example of like Kafka's Metamorphosis, where people don't recognize you anymore and they kind of pretend you don't exist, right? So then you're out there stranded in the desert, the ocean, whatever analogy you want to use.
Right.
And your house of cards has come tumbling down, and you're like, well, now what do I do? You
just described my college years in like 3 sentences. So good for you for that. I completely resonate with that, because the groups that I shared with, the people that I invested the most time in, were those religious groups, at one point or other, whether it was youth group, whether it was my college ministry and stuff. So when you realize, I'm not quite like everyone else, am I? And you start kind of going down that journey a bit, suddenly you start to go places where other people just can't seem to follow you. And it's like it's a lonely feeling.
It's very lonely. And I don't know if we're like different people are hardwired differently. Like, I ask those questions to people who were my friends and things like that, like about the slavery in the Bible, about eternal torment for unbelievers, all these things that I don't know if people are just putting on a front and they're okay, and they're not okay with it, but they got to put on that front. Yeah. And I just can't be fake, all these kind of things, like, or they're really okay with it. Like they're really okay with genocide or slavery and things like that. And I'm like, I'm just not, I can't stay here.
Yeah. I think it has to be a little bit of both, right?
Maybe, yeah.
I think for my part it was probably ignorance. Like I didn't like view, I didn't view like it's passages in the Old Testament where God commanded the Israelites to, conquer other nations and stuff. I didn't see that as genocide. That wasn't like the language that was taught for me to view that. That was following the will of God. That's how I was taught that, and how to interpret that. And so like, I don't even think the same language is even being used mentally, when talking about that stuff. I think it's and that's when it's interesting when you are a Christian, you first talk to skeptic and stuff, at least for me, because the language and description of this stuff is so different from when you're growing up in this. And I think that's why, I talk to atheists who never grew up in Christianity and who are just like, how do you ever believe in this stuff? This is so bizarre. It's like, because like you're taught from birth to like be like marinated in this language, and language really does control like the way you think about things. It really does. It completely controls the narrative, and it controls the framing by which you understand the world. And like my deconstruction was definitely evidence of that, for sure.
Yeah, and frankly, if you have beliefs and doctrines and theologies and you don't know when you figured them out, or have a rough estimate because you're like, maybe I was 3, 4, 5, that's a whole different upbringing than someone who hears about the absurdity of some ancient story when they're 25 and they're like a rational person. The person who grew up with it all, their whole life, I mean, it's so hammered home. It's indoctrination that it takes a long time and a lot of working through it to actually get out of it.
Yeah, for sure. So you've been working on that for yourself and your own journey. You've been kind of figuring out where you stand today. Do you have a solid label for yourself now, or do you not even do labels anymore?
Well, I don't want to like sound like, I don't know, quasi woke by reject labels, because I do believe labels matter. We need labels for language. I think I've heard Richard Rohr say, to reject all dualism is itself dualistic. So the people who are like, I'm going to shed all my labels, it's like, well, then how are you going to talk to anyone? So I don't care the label people put on me. I don't think of the labels in a practical way. So it doesn't, they don't impact my life on the day-to-day on how to treat others with respect and empathy and compassion. If you had to put a label on me, I would be fine with Buddhist, though I don't think I'm Buddhist. I would be fine with Christian, though I don't practice Christianity necessarily. I don't go to church. I don't read my Bible unless I'm doing research, or I'm just interested in something, or I'm in some sort of argument with someone. Typically online, unfortunately. Right.
Yep.
But I'm fine with the label of like, I'm a human being. I'm just trying to live a human existence. I don't really think about it on the day to day.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I think I see myself in that a bit for a while, because I didn't know what to call myself for a bit. I obviously am part of the atheist community of Austin, and I say I'm an atheist and stuff. But like the problem with that is it doesn't describe your sense of ethics. When you use labels like that, and it doesn't describe your journey, really. Because me being an atheist and another person being an atheist, that can mean completely different things about how people got to that position. And so for me, it was an ex-Christian one. It was a Christian upbringing and a Christian background, and having that Christian mindset and losing that, and kind of becoming this humanist, sentientist, person that I am now. Like that background really matters to me in how I view stuff. And I think that's true for anybody. Like, I think everybody's backgrounds matter into their position, whether it matters to their like philosophical arguments or not. Like, there's still something there that gets lost when we don't have like the language to really capture that. So I play with different labels and stuff now. So atheist is the most recent one for me.
What is it?
I use the term atheist. So an atheist or an agnostic is someone who doesn't necessarily make a claim one way or another on the existence of God, because God is such a nebulous concept and such a undefined term that to say one way or the other is semantically meaningless without context. So I can't sit here and say God isn't real, because your version of God might be, well, God is nature. Okay, well, I believe nature is a thing, but like, I can't say it. But like, to the Christian God, Yahweh, I don't have any belief in that, and most kind of mainstream understandings of the word God. But
I'm glad I think it's important. See, that's why language matters, because I was thinking about coming on here and talking to you, and running through maybe some questions that atheists may ask, and I'm like, it doesn't really matter if someone asks me, well, do you believe in God? Why do you believe in God? I don't even know if I can answer that, because I have to ask, and this is kind of piggybacking on the work of Jacques Derrida, the French philosopher. Like, are we talking about the same thing? What is our unity of text? What does God mean? And I'm like, okay, well, what does God mean to me? Like, I've come to the place where probably my understanding of God is much different than most people who believe in God. And I almost think of God as like the nothingness or the void in which everything can exist. Because if things exist, like, well, I don't see God as a thing that exists in the known universe. I don't think we can find evidence of God in that way.
Okay.
So what if God is just the nothingness that makes everything possible, or pure potential, or something like that? So I don't even know if I believe in a God with a personality, or someone I could talk to outside of like other subjective people like you, in whom you have a consciousness and all that. And maybe that's a part of God as well. The
nothingness that makes, or that is, pure potential.
Maybe something like that. Yeah, I don't know. It's probably Zen Buddhism that is kind of in that way, but Christians might not be able to resonate with that. I don't know.
Yeah, no, probably not. But like, I find that curious, because like from my perspective, I've given up on trying to label things God. Like it doesn't really mean the same thing to me anymore. And I find that I don't need that, or really need to think about it to like navigate and live my life the way that I am. So and plus, like you said, like just that problem of describing stuff to people, like you're always going to get it wrong. It's like, especially when it's that complex of a definition. I don't want people to have a master's in theology, or in religious studies, to understand what I'm talking about with people. So I try to simplify it as much as I can, but I don't know, I can imagine that can be a difficult thing for you.
Well, and at the same time, I don't even really talk about it all that much outside of like when I do theology, I know I'm not talking about God. Like, I'm talking about theology, and a lot of theists or Christians or religious folks conflate the two, right? So they think of all their words as being God, or the Bible, God wrote the Bible, blah blah blah, and I just don't think of that any longer. When I talk about like, okay, well, I do things that I think are good, I try to. Right, just, merciful, compassionate, empathetic, and loving. And if that's God, great. And if that's just those things, fine too.
Okay. Yeah, I see. So like, almost God in that sense is almost like something to aspire to. Like sure. You talk about like the potential of people almost.
Right. I mean, no matter what God you believe in, or if you don't believe in God, you're going to imitate that God. And if you don't believe in God, you're going to imitate someone else. We're imitative creatures, right? So if I believe in a violent God who doesn't like gay people, guess what? I don't like gay people. That's please don't quote, like, don't take that quote out of context.
You just made an announcement on yourself recently on them, but I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Yeah. No, speaking of which, no, I'm not gay, but I came out as bi.
Yeah,
and that was a recent announcement publicly, which has. I don't know. It's, doing the work that I do and talking about the things that I talk about, most of the trolls and the fundamentalists have already taken their ball and gone home years ago.
Sure.
So I didn't get too much of that hate and pushback. There's been some awkwardness with family and in-laws and things of that nature, based on ignorance and not understanding what it means to be bisexual and married to a woman for 17 years in a monogamous relationship. And I feel like that meme, like your head explodes, like people can't imagine that the two can coexist.
Right. I want to go back on something you said real quick, because you're talking about like, if you believe in a God that's violent, then you will ultimately be violent. And if you don't believe in a God, there's still things you can imitate
Yeah.
And I find some truth in that, in the sense that, like, yeah, I think when I was a Christian, like, I don't know, my God was a God of love. So I thought I was acting in that sense, right? I thought I wanted to obey his will. But like at the same time, again, you talk about the semantics of what love meant. Love meant, oh, well, like a straight relationship. Definitely didn't mean, just loving whoever you wanted. It
Right.
had to be within specific confines. And also, it also meant certain political ideologies as well. Like that's baked into it. And so like it does kind of lose a meaning there. Like when I think of God as like a social construct, like a phenomenon that's in your head that you kind of follow. And like in that sense, it totally makes sense as to why people would follow these ideas that they've just built for themselves rather than follow an external thing, because you're in a group of people who have also kind of built this idea and you're kind of sharing it. And so like I get that too. And I like, people make the criticisms of the atheist community as well when they say, oh, well, you're just joining another religion. And atheists obviously are capable of a lot of groupthink. You can see that. You can see people trying to following the herd. But I will say that we at least talk about it a lot more. Like we're at least pretty open, and we try to fix ourselves. There's been a lot of changes in the atheist community even since I've been here, and hopefully for the better. I think we're trying to call out the mistakes of our past, and figure out how we can be a more inclusive community, and try to nominate leaders who are more respectful of that. But like it's interesting to see that happening kind of in Christianity in the United States, but like it's different though. It's a different thing because our community is very small and very insular, and like at least the online ones, right? Like, but like there's just so much to the church and so much to especially in the United States, what that can mean, and how those changes are happening. It's and different groups are changing different ways. So
there's still a lot of power in the church, although I mean membership is declining. Maybe some of it's due to COVID, maybe some of it is just this is the way it's been going for a while. I know like the Southern Baptist Convention, their membership's been declining. Praise the Lord.
Amen.
Amen, brother. Yes. But there's still a lot of power. I mean, they still have a lot of power. I think they were one of the main reasons, someone like Trump got elected. So they still have political power. But there are a lot of changes in people of faith as well.
Yeah.
And I think it's nice that, I mean, technology is helping like us have this kind of conversation. This is more authentic. I've never even met you. Like this is more authentic than like 20 out of 25 years of my church experience with people I knew for 10 years. I mean, just so I think when people just see each other as human beings, no matter what they believe about metaphysics and the ontology of God and human, I mean, just be a human being, just be a decent person.
Yeah. Turns out you don't need to go to a church to do that.
Oh yes. No, I mean, I haven't been to church in years and I've never been happier.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, same. It's just there is like a hierarchy, that like an institutional hierarchy there in church that kind of makes it harder to be a good person sometimes, if that makes sense. Like I couldn't, at least the last church that I was a part of, it was like when I started to question and when I started to develop my own sort of Christian path, it was not accepted amongst my peers. It was definitely rejected. It was definitely shunned, or definitely people wanted to talk to me about it in hushed tones more than open conversation. And like I will never forget that feeling, because I think that is probably the feeling that most people who are on paths like ours go through. It's not a place of universal acceptance, and that's unfortunate.
I laugh at those churches, especially as a bisexual man, like they have the all are welcome, and I'm like I don't think you mean that. I think we have a different definition of welcome as well.
I agree.
And all.
I agree. Yeah, even the more progressive churches I see who are in support of other movements and stuff, I'm just I don't know. I can't help but be suspicious. I just can't. Like that's what's really sad, because like I'm sure that they are trying their best to work through whatever prejudices and biases that they have, but at the same time, like I know that 100% of the people in there probably don't feel the same way. You know, like that there has to be some in the background, but maybe that's prejudice and unexamined bias. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see as demographics change in this country, what Christianity will look like. I'm curious.
Yeah,
I don't know what it'll be.
I
What
can
you?
only
You've written on
hope-
this. You've written on this a bit.
on the changes in Christianity.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Christianity has to become a much more mystical sort of understanding of Christianity, and much less dogmatic and rigid, and
Sure.
and to take a more, I mean, if you wanted to talk about getting back to the early Christians, more about a way of being and a way of living and with each other, and it's more about ethics than necessarily doctrine and dogma. And if Christianity gets back to that, and I hope it does, not that they were perfect by any means, they had horrible views on women,
Yeah.
a lot of problems in the early church.
Had?
Well, no. Yes,
complementarianism is still alive and well in this country, Matthew.
I know, and it's absolutely awful. That is, and I actually have a book coming out sometime this year, and I'll cover that. I think complementarianism is a joke, an absolute joke. But anyway, as well as the early church did on serving the poor and being communal and putting ethics above anything else, like they did have some bad views, or what I would call bad views.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. But we're about time now to get to some calls here. So I think we should do that if you're ready. Cool. But before we do that, I have to always thank our patron of the week, folks. This show is supported almost entirely by volunteers. And I always give a shout out to a patron once a week. So if you like to become a patron and get your shout out, you can do that. It's patreon.com/truthwanted. I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons that donate, but we have one to shout out in particular. And this week's patron of the week is, drum roll, please. Anybody? Oh, there it is coming on screen. It's not on screen yet, actually. Dustin Ross. Thank you, Dustin Ross, for donating to Truth Wanted. And again, if you'd like to do that, patreon.com/truthwanted. It goes towards making this thing happen. I don't make any money off this show, folks. All of that goes towards getting equipment and paying for Grubhub and like all kinds of other stuff that makes this thing happen. So thank you to everybody once again who donates. And Matthew, I think we should get to some calls now. Are you ready for it?
Yeah, I was born ready.